You are listening to languagecaster.com. Hello everyone, we hope you're all safe and well, and welcome to the podcast for fans of football who wish to improve their English language skills. My name's Damien and I'm based in a cloudy but dry London the day after the final fixtures of the Premier League season. Now, I wonder what the weather is like in Tokyo for Damon.
Well, Damien, it's a bit boring here. We've had rain for the past 2 months, it seems. It's not too heavy in Tokyo, but further west in the country, they're really suffering from flooding. So not the best weather, but there's always been the football to take our minds off things. What have you seen this week?
I've seen a lot of football this week, including the Liverpool win over Chelsea, West Ham's draw away at Manchester United, which my Hammers supporting brother enjoyed, Aston Villa's victory over Arsenal, and also some drama from the final day of the Championship. West Brom won direct promotion to next season's Premier League, while Brentford, Fulham, Swansea and Cardiff all made the playoffs. I also watched games from the final game of the season in the Premier League. I saw Spurs finishing 6th after drawing with Crystal Palace, while I also had one eye on the relegation battle involving games with Aston Villa, Watford and Bournemouth.
Yes, the final day certainly shaped up to be interesting at the top and bottom of the table in the Premier League and elsewhere.
Vous écoutez languagecaster.com.
Yes, you are listening to languagecaster.com, and that message was in French. Send us a message in your language too. Just contact us here at admin@languagecaster.com. And please think about supporting what we do via patreon.com/languagecaster.
Ακούτε languagecaster.com.
Now, what's on the rest of the show, Damon?
Right, we start with a quick look at some of the new polls we have on our site. Then we review some of the football stories from the week in our good, the bad and ugly section. After that, we explain some football language, and this week we look at Golden Boot. Then there's a football language question, and we finish off with some predictions from the final day of the Premier League season.
Okay, we have a couple of new polls this week. We want to know which teams are going to win the end-of-season tournaments. The FA Cup final, which is between Arsenal and Chelsea, takes place next weekend. The Champions League and the Europa League, both of which restart at the beginning of August.
Listeners, let us know what you think and keep your eyes out for those polls, or come along to the site at languagecaster.com. Which team is our listeners' favourite for the Champions League so far?
Well, Manchester City have the most votes so far, just ahead of Barcelona and Atletico Madrid and Juventus. And FC Basel are currently the most popular team to win this season's Europa League. Right, next up we review the football news from the week, and don't forget that you can read along while listening to the podcast by coming along to LanguageCaster and accessing the transcript to the show, complete with vocabulary support. Right, here's Damon with some of the good news from the last few days in football.
Well, a really good week for 2019-20 Premier League champions Liverpool. Sorry about that, as they defeated Chelsea 5-3 before lifting the Premier League trophy. Then, at the end of the week, their captain Jordan Henderson won the Player of the Year award as voted by journalists, and then the team won again their 32nd victory of the season, 3-1 away at Newcastle.
Well done to all at Liverpool. It was also a good week for Juventus, who won their 9th Italian title in a row after defeating Sampdoria 2-0 on Sunday. This is a record among the top 5 leagues in Europe. Congratulations also to PSG, who completed a domestic double after winning the Coupe de France 1-0 over Saint-Etienne. Neymar scored the winner, but there will be some anxious moments for the French side as Kylian Mbappe was injured and may be out of the upcoming Champions League knockout rounds.
How about some of the bad news from the week?
Watford were relegated after 5 years in the Premier League when they were thumped. That's thrashed or heavily defeated by Manchester City in midweek, and then the Hornets lost again against Arsenal on Sunday. They had fired their manager with 2 games to go and ended up losing both of those matches. A strange decision indeed. Another team that was unable to avoid the drop was Bournemouth, as they were also relegated to the Championship, and this despite winning their final fixture against Everton. Like Watford, the South Coast club had spent 5 years in the top flight, but will find themselves in the second tier when the new season starts in September. Anything else, Damon?
Bad also for Leicester. They got off to such a great start and at one point were the closest challengers to Liverpool. Then at the beginning of the year they still looked comfortable in the top 4, so they will feel a real sense of disappointment at losing that Champions League spot in the last few weeks of the season. A tame 2-0 loss to Manchester United sealed their fate.
Well, in our ugly story this week, unfortunately, we have to report on yet another racism story from football. This time, it is about Crystal Palace star Wilfried Zaha, who has told the BBC that he's afraid to check social media, as he receives so much racist abuse on platforms such as Twitter. It's pretty ugly indeed.
Hello everybody, my name is Omid, I am from Tashkent. I will tell you now. You are listening to languagecaster.com in my Uzbek language. Siz languagecaster.com saytida podcastlarni tinglayapsiz.
And next, it's some football language.
Okay, it's the end of the season, and this means that trophies are being handed out to the best team, Liverpool. The Player of the Year award, Jordan Henderson. The best goalkeeper, that's the Golden Gloves Award, went to Manchester City's Ederson, and the league's top scorer. And this award is known as the Golden Boot. This season it was won by Leicester's Jamie Vardy with 23 goals, which was one ahead of Southampton's Danny Ings and Arsenal's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The Golden Boot Award is also the name of the trophy given to the top scorers in the World Cup and European Championships. Damon, do you remember which players won the Golden Boot Awards in the last World Cup in Russia? How about the 2019 Women's World Cup in France?
Harry Kane and Megan Rapinoe.
Yep, well done. Now, one of our regular listeners, Jose from Brazil, emailed us to ask about how the idiom "the slate wiped clean" is used when speaking about football, and in particular the link to yellow cards in the group stages in a cup or tournament. Well, thank you for the question, Jose, and yes, wiping the slate clean means to start something again, maybe after something bad has happened. Imagine an old blackboard in a classroom. These were made of slate, and to clean them means to start again. Now, the phrase wipe the slate clean in football is used, as you mentioned, when talking about yellow cards and cautions. If a player has been yellow carded twice in a tournament group game, then that player will have to miss the next game. They are suspended. But these cards are wiped clean from the player's record when the next stage begins, and means the player will not be suspended if they receive another caution. Hope that answers the question, Jose, and thanks again for the question and the kind words about the show. Now, we also had another message from a football fan in Brazil this week, this time on Instagram from Amadeo, who asked about the word rocket in football, and in particular this sentence: Trezeguet rocket bursts Gunner's bubble and lifts Villa out of drop zone. Well, a rocket in football is usually associated with a really hard shot, an unstoppable shot. And so here, the sentence means that the Aston Villa player Trezeguet has scored against Arsenal, the Gunners, with an unstoppable shot. By the way, to burst someone's bubble here would be to shatter or break their dreams. And of course, his goal meant that Aston Villa moved out of the bottom three, the relegation zone. By the way, other words for a really hard shot in football include thunderbolt, screamer, or a sweet strike.
Hi, my name's Izzy. I'm a fan of Dulwich Hamlets FC, and you're listening to languagecaster.com.
Thanks a lot for those questions. Remember that you can drop us a line here at LanguageCaster through our various social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. We also have a football language forum, and thanks to those who've joined in the conversations, including the one on our favourite football films. Well, of course, you can also email us at admin@languagecaster.com.
Hello, my name is Marcelo. I'm from Brazil. I'm a fan of Vasco da Gama, and you are listening to languagecaster.com.
Next up, we have a football language quiz.
Okay, in this week's football language quiz, we look at the noun worldy and want to know which of the following is the closest meaning. Is it number 1, a really bad tackle? Number 2, a really bad injury? Number 3, a really bad decision? Or number 4, a really good goal?
And we'll have the answer at the end of the show.
Next up, we look back at some of the big games in our prediction section from the final week of the season. Remember, it's 3 points for a perfect score and 1 for the correct score.
Okay, let's start with the battle to qualify for next season's Champions League. Leicester had been in poor form for a while and were missing a lot of players through injury and suspension. So even though United had also not been playing well, they ran out 2-0 winners. A result I actually predicted.
Yeah, I thought that it might be a draw. Enough for Manchester United, but Leicester really had a nightmare in this game with all the problems you mentioned before the game too.
Okay, West Ham versus Aston Villa. West Ham was safe, but Aston Villa travelled to the London Stadium just above the relegation zone on goal difference. So I thought this game would finish 2-2. The game finished 1-1, which gave me a point, and of course kept Aston Villa in the top flight for a second successive season.
Well, I thought Villa would easily win this one. The cliche on the beach came to mind, thinking about West Ham, who were safe and had nothing to play for, and were probably thinking about their holidays. So I was surprised it was a competitive 1-1 draw.
พวกท่านกำลังรับฟัง languagecaster.com
Right, it's time for the answer to our football language quiz question, and we wanted to know the meaning of the word worldy. Was it 1, a really bad tackle? 2, a really bad injury? 3, a really bad decision? Or 4, a really good goal? Damien, what's the answer?
Well, it's number 4, a really good goal. To score a worldie means to score a world-class goal. A worldie.
Well done if you got that right, and we'll have another question next week.
Now, just before we go, we'd like to say well done to the Crazy Old Man team that won our Fantasy Football League. Congratulations, Dan, who edged out Patrick's Baresi Babes and Brennan Rovers by a slender margin, only 6 and 13 points respectively. We'll have another LanguageCaster Fantasy Football League season coming up very soon, in about 7 weeks to be precise. Thanks to everyone who took part, and congratulations again to Dan. Okay, that's it for this week's show. See you next week when we'll be talking about the FA Cup final. Come along to our site, say hello, participate in the polls, ask or answer some of the questions on our forums, and just generally let us know what you think about the show. Bye-bye.
Ta-ra!